What is the goal of virtue, after all, except a life that flows smoothly? Epictetus, Discourses, Book 1, Chapter 4. When I travel around in some place new, I like to bring along a map of the territory. It gives me a sense of where I'm going, where I shouldn't go, and a context for all the things I will be experiencing during the journey. This chapter is a map of the broad contours of Stoicism, as well as a summary of the guiding principles that structure the rest of the book, so that you may make the most out of this experience. I am convinced that we can hardly appreciate a philosophy or a religion, or any complex idea really, without some understanding of its often nonlinear path of development. And so, let's begin with a closer look at the history of the philosophy that we are about to explore, and which you might decide to apply to your life. As the story is told by Diogenes Laertius in his Lives of the Eminent Philosophers, Stoicism began in Athens, Greece, around the year 300 BCE. Zeno, a Phoenician merchant and native of Citium, modern-day Cyprus, who we are assured was fond of eating green figs and basking in the sun, became interested in philosophy after being shipwrecked on a voyage from Phoenicia to Piraeus with a cargo of purple. He went up into Athens and sat down in a bookseller's shop, being then a man of 30. As he went on reading the second book of Xenophon's Memorabilia, he was so pleased that he inquired where men like Socrates were to be found. Crates, a cynic philosopher, passed by in the nick of time, so the bookseller pointed to him and said, "Follow yonder man." Zeno did follow Crates and became his student. One of the first things he learned from his new teacher was to practice not being ashamed of things of which there is nothing to be ashamed. Crates had Zeno go around with a pot full of lentil soup. Crates then broke the pot, and Zeno took to flight in shame, with his teacher yelling after him in full view of a crowd, "Why run away, my little Phoenician? Nothing terrible has befallen you." Zeno studied under Crates and other philosophers for several years, after which he felt confident enough to start his own school. While initially his followers were, predictably enough, called Zenonians, eventually they began to be referred to as Stoics, because they met under the Stoa Poikile, or painted porch, a public place in the center of the city. Anyone could come by and listen to Zeno talk about a number of topics, from human nature to duty, law, education, poetry, rhetoric, and ethics, among others. We know this because, although few of Zeno's writings have survived, the titles of his books are listed by Diogenes Laertius. Zeno died at a very old age. One source says he was 98, either of a fall or having reckoned that he was in pain and could no longer be useful to society, by committing suicide by starvation. After Cleanthes, Zeno's pupil and the second head of the Stoa, came another pivotal figure in the history of our philosophical movement, Chrysippus of Stoli, who was a long-distance runner before he turned to philosophy. He wrote many books about all sorts of subjects. Diogenes Laertius mentions the incredible figure of 705, and more importantly, introduced a great number of new ideas, so many, in fact, that the ancients used to say that but for Chrysippus, there had been no porch. Stoicism didn't come out of nowhere, of course. The early Stoics were heavily influenced by previous philosophical schools and thinkers, in particular by Socrates and by the Cynics, and also by the academics, followers of Plato. See the appendix in the accompanying bonus PDF for more on these different schools of thought. They spent a significant amount of time engaging rivals in lively debate, especially the academics, the peripatetics, followers of Aristotle, and of course the Epicureans. Epictetus, for instance, devotes 3 entire chapters of the Discourses to rebutting Epicurus. Each of these schools was eudaimonic, that is, their objective was to figure out the best way of living a human life. Some emphasized virtue, the peripatetics, the Cynics, and the Stoics, and others pleasure, the Epicureans, the Cyrenaics, while still others were more interested in metaphysics, the academics, or in the limits of human knowledge, the skeptics. All, however, aimed at the same